It started the day after my father's funeral. I was still walking through the haze of grief, sorting through stacks of old documents and mementos from the ranch that had been in our family for 3 generations. I had grown up on this land, acres of rolling pastures, a rambling farmhouse with creaking floors, and a barn that still smelled faintly of my dad's old leather saddles. It wasn't just property. It was my history, my identity, my sanctuary. When Dad passed, he left it all to me, every fence post, every blade of grass, every weathered board in the house. I thought keeping it in the family would be the easy part. I didn't realize there was a war coming, a war started by a homeowners association I never even signed up for. It began with a letter. Thick envelope. Stiff paper. The kind of thing that already feels like trouble before you even open it. Inside was a formal notice from the Silver Pines Estates HOA, a community development that had popped up a few miles down the road from my property in the last decade. The letter said they had conducted a property review and determined my land fell under their jurisdiction due to a recent boundary interpretation. I didn't even know what that meant. The important part came in bold, underlined print. Outstanding HOA fees and penalties, $250,000. Immediate payment required to avoid legal action. I thought it was a scam. Some junk mail from a desperate collection agency. But a follow-up email arrived 2 days later from an actual law firm, complete with my property description and a breakdown of charges. They were serious. They were claiming I owed them for 10 years of back HOA dues, fines for non-compliant structures, my barn, unauthorized livestock, my cattle, and even unsanctioned exterior paint color, the exact shade of red my family had used on the barn for decades. I nearly laughed reading it. Nearly. Until I realized they weren't backing off. I called their office, expecting to clear it up in 5 minutes. Instead, I got a smug-sounding HOA president named Linda on the line. She spoke slowly, as if explaining to a stubborn child why candy before dinner was a bad idea. Mr. Dawson, according to our updated maps and property lines, your ranch now falls under Silver Pines jurisdiction. These fees are non-negotiable. I told her my ranch predated Silver Pines by 70 years. She chuckled. Actually chuckled. Times change, Mr. Dawson. Progress marches forward. Now, if you'd like to avoid foreclosure. That's where I hung up. But it didn't end there. Over the next month, they started sending inspectors, or as I called them, clipboard-wielding busybodies, onto my land. They photographed my fences, measured my porch railing, and even tried to issue a violation for my dog being off-leash. My own dog. On my own land. I chased one of them off with a warning shot in the air, not at him, just enough to make it clear he wasn't welcome. That earned me a visit from the county sheriff, who sheepishly handed me another letter from the HOA's lawyers. That's when I decided to dig. I drove to the county records office and spent hours combing through dusty binders and property maps. What I found made my jaw drop. The original land deeds from the late 1800s showed my ranch's borders were actually much larger than the fenced area we'd been using for years. Turns out, my great-grandfather had purchased additional land back in 1912, land that, according to these old records, included the exact acreage where Silver Pines Estates now sat. Their fancy houses, manicured lawns, and pretentious little clubhouse. All of it was technically built on land still deeded to my family. At first, I thought it had to be a clerical error. But the county clerk confirmed it. The HOA had developed their neighborhood based on a survey that had quietly ignored the older, legally binding boundaries. No one had contested it back then, probably because my dad didn't even know. But the paperwork was airtight. Legally, they were on my property. I went home that night and poured myself a drink, staring out over the dark fields. They wanted to charge me for having cattle? Fine. I'd charge them for living on my land. They wanted $250,000? I'd take everything. The next week, I hired a sharp, no-nonsense property attorney named Harris. He was the kind of guy who smelled blood in the water the second I explained the situation. We filed a quiet title action, essentially asking the court to confirm me as the rightful owner of the land in question, which, thanks to those century-old deeds, included every square foot of Silver Pines. The HOA didn't take it seriously at first. They sent more letters, kept demanding payment. Then they were served court papers, and the panic began. Their lawyers tried to argue adverse possession, that they'd been there long enough to claim the land as their own, but that fell apart fast. They'd only been there for 12 years, not nearly enough time for that claim to stick. Worse for them, their entire development had been approved based on a faulty survey. The court battle dragged on for months. HOA board members showed up to hearings looking pale and exhausted. Residents started whispering about the case, realizing their dream homes might not even belong to them. Some turned on the board, demanding answers. Others tried to approach me directly, offering to work something out. I refused every time. I wasn't looking for a deal. I wanted justice. When the ruling came down, it was like a thunderclap. The judge confirmed that the land, all 150 acres of Silver Pines, was legally mine. The HOA had no authority over me or my property. In fact, they were now squatters on my land. The smug President Linda? She had to sit there in court, while the judge explained that she owed me rent, along with every other resident in her precious neighborhood. I could have evicted them all immediately, but I decided to play it smart. I sent out formal lease offers to every homeowner, giving them the option to pay a monthly fee to stay. Some signed right away. Others tried to fight, but they didn't have a legal leg to stand on. Within 6 months, I was collecting rent checks from the same people who tried to bleed me dry. The HOA dissolved soon after. Without their land, they had no power. Now I sit on my porch in the evenings, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops of Silver Pines. Technically, they're still my neighbors. But I'm their landlord. They mow their lawns extra neatly now, wave nervously when they see me, and not one of them dares to set foot on my ranch without permission. Every month, the rent money rolls in, a steady reminder of what happens when you pick a fight with the wrong person. They wanted $250,000 from me. Instead, I took their entire neighborhood. And I'll never let them forget it.